Anthony, thank you so much for joining me.
My absolute pleasure. It's a thrill to be here.
It is the perfect time to talk about the science of alcohol because a lot of people have decided to stop drinking in January and are having a sober month. I wanted to ask you about the work that you have done on this amazing mini documentary, if I can call it that, because I think it really at least shifted my perspective on some of this new science behind alcohol. So let's start there. What was the motivation behind launching this show?
I think like a lot of people, I have heard all these stories about the way that alcohol is supposed to affect our bodies. That a little bit of red wine, you've probably heard this, that a little bit of red wine was supposed to be good for you. And so, hooray, we get to have all the drinks we like. But then turns out that maybe that little bit of alcohol is bad for our livers, but also it's good for our social lives and it's bad for our brains. And so we've heard all this back and forwards. And I mean, I for one was very confused about whether or not alcohol is actually good for us. And so that was really the spark for us, was to try to kind of put all that stuff to bed and explore, get the final word. Like, what are we supposed to think about alcohol? How does this affect us? Especially because there was this new study and these new guidelines that came down from Health Canada that said, well, 15 drinks a week used to be safe. We used to consider that moderate drinking and a safe amount to have. And then they came out with these new guidelines or guidances that said, actually, it's just two a week. And then they have both these guidances and these guidelines at the same time that are saying different things. And the Canadian public are kind of like, well, what are we supposed to do? So this was just supposed to put all that to bed. Just a fun way to explore the new science of alcohol in as many fun and interesting ways as we could.
I do want to add that I quit drinking 25 years ago, which is a very long time ago, and I have not had a sip of alcohol in well over 2 decades. So I certainly was aware of many of the dangers of drinking, but I thought it was really interesting when I was watching your work that one of the scientists you were speaking to said that if alcohol were introduced on the market today, it would not be approved.
We were really lucky to talk to a lot of really clever people. And one of the things that surprised me most about the doc was that, if you talk to all of them, um, they used to be ardent. Some of them were pretty ardent supporters that a little bit of alcohol was actually a good thing for us. Tim Stockwell, in the doc, he says, I would have said, if you tried to convince me that alcohol can't have any benefits, then you might as well just join the Flat Earth Society. Because the science at the time was pretty clear. Look, it's good for you. And now we have this kind of new understanding that, I mean, there's no way you could ever get alcohol approved as a substance. It's a clear poison. And yet we all, on a weekend, we're like, well, what should we do? Well, let's get into a dark room and poison ourselves a little bit at a time.
It is, I think, interesting and probably good that now in 2026 there is more awareness around some of the dangers of alcohol. But I do think we still have a long way to go. I think it was interesting to read about the connection insofar as how alcohol is a carcinogen. And specifically, I wanted to ask you about some of the research talking about women and breast cancer, because I thought that was also really fascinating, because I think these are things that maybe people aren't that aware about that certainly they should be.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, look, one of the challenges that scientists studying alcohol have had and that sciences have had is that we haven't always been as comprehensive as we might be in trying to understand these risks. So, to be specific, alcohol researchers really did not study women for the longest time. It wasn't part of what they were looking at. There are lots of reasons for that. One of the things you try to do if you're a good scientist is to control your variables by eliminating any kind of variables that might skew your data. The downside of that is that when the variable is women, suddenly you have no information about how alcohol affects their body. But it's pretty clear that alcohol has women have a heightened risk for developing cancers if they drink alcohol compared to men. If you control for the amount that they drink, then the risks are more serious for them, in particular, certain forms of breast cancer. So this is just not something we knew, and now we know, and so we are trying to get the word out.
I thought it was also really telling to see the effects of alcohol on how we socialize. And you did a lot of work in terms of being connected to a bunch of different sensors to really get an idea of that feeling that people have when they start drinking alcohol. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like to start to understand why this is so ingrained in our society?
Yeah, it was I've done a lot of, personal research, understanding sort of how alcohol can, bolster our social lives. It's famously one of the most, popular social lubricants. People love to have a good drink because it loosens us up. We feel all loosey-goosey, and so we wanted to understand that a little bit better, and so I went to Chicago, Illinois, and I spoke with a researcher, Dr. Catherine Fairbairn, and she studies what exactly is it about alcohol that makes that process easier, that makes us feel more at ease with our friends and strangers? And so, what they did was they sat me in a room. As you mentioned, they hooked my brain up to this really weird cap filled with electrodes. They squirted a bunch of goo into my hair, and then they brought in this stranger, this guy named Johnny I'd never met, and, they sat him in front of me. He's wearing the same bizarre cap. We're both kinda looking around this room we're in like, "What's going on?" We're feeling a bit nervous and, unsure, and they're like, "No, no, don't worry about anything. Here, we got these for you." And they put these drinks in front of us, and I smell it, and I'm like, "What is this?" And they're like, "Oh, don't worry, it's alcohol, 100 proof vodka. Drink it." And we're like, "What?" So they give us 3 of these glasses filled with literally medical grade vodka, and they tell us drink them, and in 36 minutes. You got 36 minutes to finish it. And, so then we sit in this room, and, they just say, "All right, now just get to know each other." And we just get to kinda hang out and talk to each other. It was such a surreal experience. Um, and so, the obvious question is, why are they doing this to us? That's what I was asking. Why? What are you doing to us? And the goal was to kind of study our brains and the brain waves, the patterns of electrical firing, to see whether or not our brain waves together would synchronize across time as a way of understanding just part of the social effect that alcohol can have on us. And so it was fascinating. I had a great time with it, although it was strange. I think I told Johnny I loved him at some points. I get when I drink, I tell everybody I love him. I don't know what to tell you.
These things happen. I have to kind of laugh too because I think about this as being an assignment, but it looked like so much fun because you were really going out and meeting people, having drinks, going out to pubs. It might have been the best assignment ever.
It was spectacular. Yeah, we got to go all over the place, and every venue we visited, virtually every venue we visited, we got to sit in a pub somewhere and knock a couple back. And that was one of the really interesting things about the doc as well, was that I talked to a huge range of experts from UK to like Halifax to across Canada, and I was asking each of them, you guys understand the risks of drinking alcohol better than almost anybody else. Do you guys still drink? And they're all like, yeah, let's have a pint. And so we'd all sit and have a drink together. It was a pretty fun experience. It's a pretty cool job.
Absolutely. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the influence of alcohol companies on things like regulation, for example, because I don't want to give away the whole documentary, but I do think it is worth pulling out one of the stories that you talked about in the Yukon, where they put bright warning labels on alcohol, and it actually had a positive effect in terms of reducing drinking in that community.
Yeah, that really surprised me actually, because, people are very familiar with, if you've ever seen a package of cigarettes, you know that they come with these bright warnings along the side and all these really, let's say, colorful pictures that they include with them that are designed to kind of make people aware of the risks if you decide to smoke, the different kinds of cancers and the consequences physically. And so, there were a couple of researchers that I talked to, both in Halifax. There was Dr. Kara Thompson and Tim Stockwell. I got to chat with in Montreal, and they were trying to understand, do these warning labels actually have an effect on people's behavior? Will they actually dissuade people from drinking? And personally, my own was that absolutely not. I mean, it's not as though people don't know that alcohol has some risks with it, right? I mean, the hangover that you get the next morning is a pretty clear indicator that maybe it wasn't such a good thing for my body. And so I figured, yeah, well, people aren't going to be dissuaded by this at all. People like having a good drink. But they ran this experiment. They tried to, anyways, in Yukon, where they put all these labels on a couple of bottles to indicate that they can cause cancer, and they wanted to see, is there a decline in the rate that people drink at? And I was astonished to see that in that case there was about a 7% drop, and they didn't even get to finish the experiment because the alcohol companies in Yukon shut the experiment down. They said they were going to sue the Yukon government because they didn't want these labels on their bottles. And so experiment lasted only about 29 days, but it still saw about a 7% drop in consumption of alcohol. So really surprising.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's very surprising, and I think what's also pretty interesting right now is that, thankfully, there are more options out there for people who do want to stop drinking. So, I think it would be great to have those warning labels on alcohol. Obviously, that may not happen, especially as here in Ontario, we have, beer everywhere, which, I'm still bitter about because I used to go to my corner store and be able to buy bread and, maybe some light, groceries. Now it's all beer everywhere. I don't think we're gonna get away from that, but there are more people who are drinking non-alcoholic drinks. Mocktails are pretty popular. And in the documentary, you talked about something that was brand new to me, which is this
Mhm.
idea of what I think are called functional beverages.
Functional beverages, that's right. Yeah, there are these drinks that are designed to kind of replicate the experience of drinking alcohol without any of the negative side effects. So they look at these molecules that are involved in that kind of loosey goosey feeling you get. We call it disinhibition in the neuroscience. um, these molecules called GABA. And so they tried to figure out, well, are there other places we can find some of these molecules? And so, long story short, they get together sort of these cocktails of different kinds of fruits and vegetables and other materials to see if they could get the same kind of effect. So you drink it, and it's designed to kind of create that same sense of disinhibition. It gives you the equivalent of if you'd have maybe a beer or two. I gotta say, the flavor, depending on the variety, there's gonna be hits and misses depending on who you are. If you like savory stuff, there's something for you. If you like sweeter stuff, there's something for you. And I really enjoyed them. And I feel like if I was in a pub and I had one of these cocktails in front of me, it looked just like a regular cocktail. I don't know that I'd be able to tell the difference. So it was pretty fascinating to see. We don't have a lot of them here in Canada, but they're definitely on the way.
Interesting. Now, one of the things that I think you also talked a little bit about, and we've talked about already, is just the social element of drinking and how historically we've done this for so many years. And I bring this up because I'm thinking, although as I said, it was a really long time ago when I quit drinking. I had not planned to quit drinking, but someone dared me to stop drinking for a month. I felt really good not drinking, and I never drank again. It's kind of a boring story, but I did actually have to shift my friend group because I realized for many years that I was part of this sort of social group where drinking was at the center of everything that we did, and I had to find new friends. I know that sounds sort of sad and dramatic, but it is absolutely true. For you going through this process, because I do believe that you stopped drinking for a period of time. What was that like in your friend group?
Man, was it challenging. It was, I mean, I still have the same friends, but, to your points, it's exactly what I experienced, exactly what you experienced, which was that you start to recognize just how much of your social life is centered around drinking. We're getting together because somebody's getting married, well, let's have a drink, or somebody's kid graduated, let's have a drink, or, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear you lost your uncle, we'll drink to him." It doesn't matter what the reason is for getting together. I noticed just how often I was having to say, "No, thanks, I'll have a Coke," or "No, thanks, I'll have a lemonade." And that first week, man, oh man, it was tough. I mean, you probably experienced this, right? That you're constantly having to come up with, if you say you're not drinking, people are like, is everything okay? Is there a reason? Are you pregnant? I mean, I didn't get pregnancy, but like people are asking all kinds of questions about why aren't you? Well, obviously you should be drinking. Why aren't you? And so it was really tough. I mean, you experienced this, right?
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me, I think there's an internet meme that has gone around for many years about the fact that alcohol is the only drug or substance where people question you not doing it. I always thought that was
Yes.
kind of fascinating, right? Like,
Yeah,
there's nothing, no one says to you, like, hey, Amber, why aren't you doing some lines of cocaine tonight? Right? I mean, that's not a normal
exactly.
question that we have. But with alcohol, we do have this sort of casualness with it. And yet, I think it's also fair to say that all of us, in some way or another, have been impacted by alcohol in really negative ways. I mean, I'm from the East Coast of Canada, and certainly there's been family members who we've lost. There's been drinking and driving accidents. I mean, we also have so many risks. If you think looking out in 2026 and beyond, and you think about the future of alcohol in this country, just from that experience of doing this documentary, do you think people are going to take some of this science and make decisions to perhaps drink less? Because we're seeing some of that data happening right now.
No, that's a really interesting question. It's kind of a tough one to answer because, I don't have a crystal ball in front of me, but, one thing I can say is that speaking to a lot of these experts, they all said pretty uniformly across the pond and back here in Canada that young people, younger generations, seem to be drinking a lot less. They are not engaging in it the same way that, I'm almost 40. When I was in university, that was the way that people hung out, and, we did it to excess, and I'm not endorsing it, but it was an integral part of socializing and social life, and it just doesn't seem to be the case for younger people. So if we're going to use that as an indicator, then it seems like maybe drinking is on the way out. I know that certainly among my friendship circle now, people are definitely looking for ways and opportunities to drink less. A lot of my friends do dry January, which, by the way, we know has measurable effects even within just the 1 month that you give it up for your sleep and your memory and your clarity of thinking. So it does seem that drinking is falling out of popularity, not everywhere, not all at once. And so, the trajectory, if it's declining, it'll probably be a slow decline, just because, again, drinking is common across virtually all cultures across the world and across time. So um, it may take some time for it to phase out if it's going to.
I'm not asking you to do a follow up to this documentary, but I think it's interesting to think about how technology and wearable devices like smart bands and smart rings will show you the effects of alcohol on things like your sleep and your strain. My husband and I both wear these, and I'm always looking at his data. And if he has a few drinks the next day, you can see that his sleep was really low quality. And so I'm just curious if we think about going into the future, if people start to see this data and the effects of alcohol through their personal health information that they start to collect, maybe this will have a bigger impact on how people consume alcohol.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely not even possible, probably likely. Smartphones and wearables and all the kinds of tools we have for collecting data about our physical well-being are only becoming more common. And people have a sense that, oh, I feel a little hungover today. Maybe I'm not as sharp as I think or as I normally am. But when you can see it in the data, like the hard numbers in front of you, like you were 80% less productive today, and you can measure that, you're like, oh, I mean, I've got a trade-off to make now. Maybe having too much of a good time last night wasn't worth the downside today. So I think that trend is likely to increase. But more than that, I think the proliferation of the rapid spread of other options besides alcohol, I think is going to help a lot too. I'm lucky enough to get to travel a lot for this job. And, after we go on a shoot, it's not uncommon for the crew and I to sit down to dinner somewhere or at a pub somewhere and just kind of shoot the breeze. And I have been really blown away by just how many more non-alcoholic options are available for people. And I'm noticing in Canada in particular, it feels like it's exploding. They're just everywhere. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of reasons this trend will probably increase.
And I think those non-alcoholic options are getting better all the time in terms of the
Yeah.
the
Oh, they're
taste, the
great.
quality, right? I mean, that's where we're seeing this real tipping point, and just having more options for more people. One last question for you. I just, as you were speaking, I was thinking because you did travel to 3 different countries, at least as you were creating, this documentary. Did you notice, different sort of, uh opinions about drinking in different places as you were traveling to them? I mean, is Canada kind of more conservative right now about how much people do drink? Because it seems like a lot of interesting research is coming out of this country.
Well, definitely compared to, the Brits. I will say that we got to travel to, the UK, London specifically. We were walking around right around 5 o'clock, happy hour, when people were leaving work, and the pubs were literally spilling onto the streets everywhere you looked. And so we went and talked to some of these people to ask, what is this? I mean, because we don't have that kind of culture here in Canada, at least not in the places that I'm spending a lot of my time. And they were saying like, well, yeah, this is part of the workday. It's not. They don't even think of it as separate from work. They think this is where a lot of the handshakes that happen, where deals are closed, is in the pubs. So it's not just part of social life; it's part of your working life too. And so, yeah, it was definitely much more pronounced in the UK. I think they've got a more intense drinking culture. I didn't get to spend as much time in sort of the university culture as in the US, but I get the sense that fraternities and sororities are still doing the kinds of things that they're known for, and but it is changing in some places too. St. Francis Xavier University out east here in Canada historically was known as a party school, and that reputation that has changed a lot. People are not drinking the same way there that they used to, according to many people who work there and who went to school there. So, um, cultures seem to be varying a lot place to place, which is, I think, an indicator that culture does and can change over time.
Absolutely. My son's almost 17, and his friend group is very different than when I was his age. I think this is a great time to wrap up this conversation because what I was doing at his age wasn't something any person should be doing. But there is this different relationship with alcohol with younger people and younger generations, which I think is actually good in the long run and can be healthier for this next generation for sure. For people who do want to watch the documentary, I was able to watch it on YouTube. Can you just give us some information about where to go so that they can check it out? Because we're just scraping the surface. There's so much more really good, important information in there.
Sure, there are lots of places, ways to watch. So you mentioned already that The Nature of Things has a YouTube channel, and you can find the documentary, the full doc there for free. So that's easy as just searching The Nature of Things on YouTube. It's also available on CBC Gem, free as well. And then it airs on linear television, just regular old TV. It comes out January 8th. So yeah, you should be able to catch it there live as well.